Welcome to this Tutor2U Sociology topic video on social inequality for Cambridge OCR A-Level Sociology. In this video we're going to look at the work of Castles and Kosack on divide and rule. When studying ethnic inequalities, sociologists often ask a key question. Why does racism persist and who benefits from it? In Immigrant Workers and Class Structure in Western Europe, Stephen Castles and Kosack offered one of the most influential Marxist explanations. They argued that racism is not simply a result of ignorance or prejudice, but a deliberate and functional feature of capitalism. Their central idea was the divide and rule thesis, the claim that capitalism uses racism to divide the working class into competing groups, thereby weakening their ability to unite against exploitation. Castles and Kosack were writing in the early 1970s when Western Europe, including Britain, was undergoing major social change. Post-war immigration from former colonies in the Caribbean, South Asia and Africa had created new multicultural societies, but also led to racial tensions. Immigrant workers were often confined to low-paid, insecure jobs, while facing hostility from parts of the white working class. At the same time, Marxist theory was experiencing a revival as sociologists look for structural explanations of inequality. Castles and Kosack's contribution was to show that immigration and racism could only be properly understood through the lens of capitalism. Their divide and rule thesis proposed that capitalist societies actively create and sustain racial divisions because these divisions benefit the ruling class. They identified three key ways in which this process works. Firstly, capitalism depends upon a reserve army of labour, a pool of cheap, flexible workers who can be employed when needed and dismissed when not. Immigrants often filled this role, taking up low-status and insecure jobs that others rejected. Secondly, racism divides the working class by encouraging hostility between white and minority ethnic workers. Instead of seeing each other as allies with shared interests, they come to view one another as rivals. This weakens class unity and undermines collective resistance, such as trade union action. Finally, racism acts as a scapegoating mechanism that distracts attention from the real causes of social problems. Rather than blaming capitalism for low wages, unemployment or poor housing, workers are encouraged to blame minority groups. The result is a fragmented and divided working class, while the ruling class maintains control. Castles and Kosack's work is firmly rooted in Marxist theory. Like other Marxists, they see inequality as the product of capitalist exploitation. Their distinctive contribution, however, was to show that racism serves as an economic function for capitalism. It's not an accident, but a tool used to maintain power and profit. This contrasts sharply with functionalist perspectives such as that of Patterson, who viewed racial tension as a temporary cultural misunderstanding that would fade over time. Castles and Kosack, by contrast, saw racism as structural and enduring, built into the organisation of capitalist societies themselves. Castles and Kosack's study was largely theoretical and comparative, drawing on evidence from several Western European countries, including Britain, France and Germany. This allowed them to identify general patterns in how immigrant labour was used and exploited across capitalist societies. One strength of their approach is that it offered a systematic and structural explanation of racism that could apply across different national contexts. However, a key limitation is that their analysis lacked detailed primary empirical data. Their work was more of a theoretical framework than an in-depth field study. Their key findings can be summarised clearly. Capitalism requires a reserve army of labour, and immigrants often fill this role. Racism divides the working class, preventing solidarity and collective action, and the ruling class benefits from this division, maintaining social control and protecting their profits. As a result, ethnic minorities are concentrated in low-paid, insecure jobs, while class inequality continues largely unchallenged. There are several notable strengths in Castle's and Kosack's analysis. It provides a powerful explanation of the link between capitalism and racism, showing how racism benefits those at the top rather than simply reflecting personal prejudices. It highlights the economic and structural functions of racism, offering a materialist understanding that remains relevant today. Their ideas help explain why migrant labour often remains concentrated in low-wage sectors such as agriculture, hospitality and logistics. However, the theory also has weaknesses. It can be criticised for being overly deterministic, implying that all forms of racism are driven by capitalism, when cultural and political factors also play a role. It also lacks detailed empirical evidence and tends to overlook the agency of minority groups, who have often resisted exploitation and fought for rights and equality. Postmodernists have further argued that it oversimplifies ethnic identities, ignoring cultural diversity and the complexity of modern societies. Despite these criticisms, the divide and rule thesis remains highly relevant today. Across the world, migrant workers continue to be concentrated in insecure, low-paid employment, while populist political movements sometimes exploit anti-immigrant sentiment to deflect attention from economic inequality. Castle's and Kosack's analysis helps us to see how racism continues to serve capitalist interests by dividing workers and maintaining existing hierarchies. For students of Cambridge OCR Sociology A-level, Castle's and Kosack are extremely useful for explaining ethnic inequality from a Marxist perspective. They can be used to show how Marxists explain racial divisions in the workplace and link them to capitalist exploitation. Their work can also be used to evaluate functionalist views such as Patterson's or Weberian approaches like Rex and Tomlinson's concept of the ethnic underclass. Their ideas also support wider debates about whether inequality is primarily caused by class, capitalism, or cultural and political factors. In conclusion, Castle's and Kosack's immigrant workers and class structure in Western Europe remains a classic Marxist analysis of ethnic inequality. By showing how racism functions as a tool of capitalist control, the divide and rule thesis provides a powerful structural explanation for the persistence of racial divisions. Although their work can be criticised for being too deterministic and lacking empirical depth, it continues to offer vital insights into how racism benefits the capitalist system and why ethnic inequality remains so entrenched in modern societies. That concludes this Tutor2U Sociology topic video on social inequality for Cambridge OCR A-Level Sociology. In this video we looked at Castle's and Kosack and their divide and rule thesis. Thanks for watching.